J. Mike Blake joins us again. J. Mike, you and I, we saw a lot of basketball last month. You know, they say June basketball is reserved for high school, and that is indeed the case. There were a lot of different live period events. You were able to see the boys and girls side in both the NCBCA, which featured NCHSA teams, and the NCISAA live periods, all of those out in the triad last month. It's going to be a much different high school basketball landscape this year for a lot of reasons. Joel was talking about impact transfers in football in the last segment. There's a lot of impact transfers in basketball, but also moving to 8 classifications. I think it just opens things up so wide now for so many teams who maybe in the past they were a 3rd round team and they're sitting there like, man, maybe we get, catch some fire, make a little bit of a run. Now those teams are kind of sitting around and saying, man, we're 4A or 5A or 8A. Like, we're in the mix now. Like, we're going to contend for a state championship. So what did you see? Let's start first on the girls' side.
Yeah, well, to just kind of expand upon that point a little bit, I talked to a number of players and coaches. You can kind of see the light come on a little bit where they're like, wait a second, they're not in our class. They're not in our class. If you just win 2 playoff games, you're in the, like, quote unquote Elite 8. Like, wait a second. Like, yeah, if we were just better than X many number of teams, then all of a sudden we're a state title contender, which is a little bit different position for some of these teams that, like you said, they're used to making runs or maybe winning playoff games, but not necessarily being one of the last ones standing. On the girls' side, let me start with the association. Anytime I say association, I'm talking about the North Carolina High School Athletic Association, where all the public schools, charter schools are. I just don't want to repeat that long term. So the association schools, you have a lot of schools on that side that are returning a lot of players, or if they're not returning a lot of players, they still seem to have the people that make them go. So I think the best team that I saw is Cherokee. And that is going to surprise people. I think so many people get caught up in how many fans Cherokee brings to state championships or how many fans Cherokee brings on the road that they kind of lost sight of the fact that Cherokee is one of the best girls basketball teams in the state of any classification. I think they could have beat anybody in the state last year on any given night. And as showed by our final rankings, which I think we had them 3rd behind only Lake Norman and Grace Christian of Sanford. And in our way too early rankings, they're 3rd behind no other public schools. They're bringing back 4 of their starting 5, and their bench got enough minutes last year where they can have no drop off. They have a lot of freshmen coming in. They can sub 5 or 5 and just keep that running clock going. The only thing for them is their new conference has, I think, like 11 members or 12 members. So they're only going to play each other once, but that's going to cut down the non-conference opportunities to fine-tune themselves, and they'll need that going into the playoffs. Lake Norman is a team that returns only a few starters, but has enough people off the bench who are ready to make that next jump. I don't see Lake Norman falling off at all. They're a preseason top 5 team for us. Southeast Alamance, they didn't have a senior class last year when they won the 2A title. Now they're 5A, so they are one of the best for us. Other teams that maybe people need to start thinking of them in terms of being a state title contender, but maybe in the past you haven't for whatever reason. Hoggard in 8A, North Mecklenburg in 7A. Everyone knows about Terry Sanford in 6A. Also get ready to talk about South Garner in 7A. Queens Grant in 2A might be Cherokee's biggest test. McDowell in Southeast Raleigh 7A, even Overhills in 7A. 7A is really deep. 7A is deeper than 8A in most sports, and girls basketball no different. Also, North Lincoln in 5A, South Mech 8A, Marvin Ridge 7A, and Wakefield 8A. There's a few other teams, but once you start kind of getting past the teams I've listed, you get into some teams where there's not a whole lot of depth. And so there could be an injury here or there, or if this player decides to, as Joel talked about, transfers to get closer to the start of the school year, and all of a sudden everything changes. But those are some of the best looking teams that we saw in that weekend.
Yeah, and I think we're just going to have to calibrate our minds now to realize that, I think when you think about what's the cream of the crop in the state of North Carolina, you kind of tend to look at, what was the 4A classification. It might not necessarily be the 8A class. It might be that 7A class. That's just really where, like, the nice sweet spot of where all the talent is in terms of just overall successful athletic departments.
Oh,
But like you had said, there are some teams that I think are in that 8A or that 8A classification that are looking around now. And I mean, you talk about Hoggard and Wakefield, like that was the regional final last year in 4A. And, they're their road isn't getting harder by moving up to 8A. I would even argue it's a little bit maybe easier,
Yeah.
but it also feels like they could be on a collision course again, just in the 8A classification, the way things are panning out. And obviously, both sides returned a lot of substantial players, and I think it's interesting. Hoggard may have lost a couple of bench pieces, but they overcome that and just how much starting depth returns for them. And Wakefield, on the other hand, may have lost 3 or 4 players that were really key in their top 6 of their rotation, but they're also replacing that with a very talented junior varsity team. And, I think by the time March comes around, they're going to be right at their best like they were a year ago. And then obviously, to your point, Lake Norman, like, it's just next girl up there, and obviously they've played that system for so long, and the players that come into that program now know what the expectation is under Coach Graham, and they've been really good. And I just think they're at the point of no return in terms of their identity as a program. And then on the NCISA side, as you mentioned Grace Christian School. What is that looking like? It seems like they have loaded up after winning another state championship. They already had 2 really key pieces in Jordan Speller and Kendall English, but I feel like from what I've heard from you, that is just again a really special team that's going to make some noise this winter.
Yeah, I have not seen a girls basketball team have the kind of fortuitous transfers that Grace Christian of Sanford has had in the last 4 years. First there was Sarah Strong, coming from Fuquay Arena after her freshman year, and after that, of course, girls are going to want to go to Grace Christian because they want to play with the best player in the country. If you haven't checked out any, there are WNBA mock drafts that have Sarah Strong #1 next year, as if she would leave after her sophomore year of college. However, like, the remaining is Jordan Speller, who we saw win an MVP as a freshman at North Pitt. Kendall English, both those 2 were first team All-State for us last year. Then Cooper Cox leaves Wesleyan Christian to go to Grace Christian of Sanford. She was honorable mention All-State for us last year. Really good point guard going into her sophomore year, already getting tons of Division I offers. And then also from Wesleyan Christian is Kennedy Jackson. She'll be a 5th-year senior. She would kind of be the 5th person on the starting lineup because also after we did the way too early rankings, Lola Venor, I hope I'm saying the last name correctly, of Page High School, who was, I believe, 3rd team or honorable mention All-State for us last year. Really smooth point guard. She leaves Page to go to Grace Christian of Sanford. So that's 3 really good, like guards there who can handle the ball. Jordan Speller can attack the rim. Cooper Cox distributing, Lola Van Noor, a little bit of everything. And like that is just unbelievable. If they were in the same classification as Cannon School, it might be a really fun breakdown, like a really fun showdown, because Cannon School won the Independent Schools 4A title last year and brought back 4 starters. So they kind of different paths here, right? Where Cannon is bringing back everyone, and Grace Christian has added 3 new starters from who transferred from other places who were already established at those places. But if they were in the same class, it'd be a really fun championship showdown. As it looks right now, like if we're talking about state championship stuff, there's no one close to Grace Christian in the independent 3A ranks, except maybe Concord Academy, but they just don't have the depth. And then on the 4A side, again, Cannon School, the closest team I see to it is like Providence Day, but the depth there for Cannon School is at this, anything can happen on any given night, especially when we're a long ways away from what happens in the playoffs. But those 2 are kind of established themselves. That's why they're #1, #2 in our way too early top 25.
As J. Mike Blake mentioned, High School OT insiders, they can see the full way too early top 25, debate it, go through all of it. There's also some extra names of teams that really stood out this summer that are primed to make a good run this winter. Now let's dive into the boys' side. I think that the conversation there starts with the NCISA. Obviously, the #1 team in those way too early rankings is Greensboro Day School. And just across the board, since that way too early ranking was published, there have been a couple of impact transfers for a couple of NCISA programs, whether it be guys coming in or going out. but I still think that in no way alters how big of a year this could be for that association in terms of the talent pool and what it's going to be able to produce, J. Mike, on the boys' side.
Yeah, and this is where you really have to wait for the song to stop playing and see where everyone sits in the musical chairs. But Greensboro Day, to me, when I saw them, they look um, like the Monstars, and there's already Greensboro Day usually is not the team that looks like the Monstars. They just beat you with really sound defense, good passing, good spacing, cutting, screens, like all the basic fundamental things, and they beat you in a very low scoring game with very few possessions. They're not going to change their style of play, but they have 7 foot Julian Adigan, and then they have 6'10" Mason Robinson, and they never have to be on the court at the same time. It just looks like the exact same five is out there. Marty Giant might be the best on-ball defender in the state, fifth-year senior for the Bengals. Grant Duggins is a 6'9", very versatile wing forward. You have Andrew Jurgens, who's 6'7", also very versatile. The way that they can just bring off the second five onto the court and have no drop-off and really no differentiation. Like there's not going to be a time this year where someone gets in foul trouble, except maybe Marty Giant because of his on-ball defense, where Coach Freddie Johnson, who's won 1,200 games, not exaggerating, where he looks at the bench and goes, oh, man, so-and-so's in foul trouble. Who am I going to have to replace him? Like, there's always someone there. That's just not a knock on anyone who's in the starting five. It's just how versatile and deep they are this year. Because of the association schools having so much turnover and kind of they had a really good run, and these things go in cycles on the public school side. But because of that, this year's top 25 could have a lot of private schools in it from start to finish. You have Christ School, who's looked really, really good and really impressed. I have Greensboro Day a little bit ahead of them right now. Burlington School had a number of transfers, a lot of talent. They'll figure things out as we get closer to the start of the season. As you mentioned, there was some transfers that happened after we came out with top 25. I had Caldwell Academy number 4, knowing that Cole Clower, there were some rumors about him possibly going to IMG Academy. He did go to IMG Academy. And then number 14, we had Davidson Day, who at the time I did not have 2 transfers that they have picked up, including Xavier Hall, a guy I saw last year down at Lakewood High School. So a very big move for him going from the eastern part of the state out to Davidson Day. If I had known that then, I probably would have almost flipped. Like Davidson Day goes to 4th, Caldwell Academy goes to 14th. It's not enough to take Caldwell Academy too far back, but I think Davidson Day is just going to have 2 really good rim protectors in Xavier Hall, Will Stevens, and they already have a really good backcourt with Justin Whitfield, Lincoln Vincent, and Nick Arnold. And I didn't have Justin Whitfield as a transfer initially, but he's been very good at Victory Christian Center these past couple of years. So yeah, you got those guys. Greenfield School is still really good. Kobe Edwards is the first teamer returning for us. I mentioned Davidson Day. Harold's Christian is a team that is so athletic and fun to watch. You have Antonio McCoy and Deshaun McCoy just leaping, jumping, getting alley-oops. And then a few others. There's so many others to mention, but Wesleyan Christian, Trinity Christian, Gaston Christian, and then some teams that didn't make our top 25, but we definitely noticed them. Forsyth Country Day with Q Williams at running point. Fayetteville Academy looked really good when I saw them. And then Wayne Country Day and Providence Day as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the things to point out about the way too early rankings is that, A, they're published on a Wednesday in July. But
B, snapshot. It's just a snapshot, yeah.
It's just a snapshot, and there's 500, 600 teams in the state of North Carolina that play basketball that are eligible for the high school OT ranking. So if you are 25 or even 26 through 35, like you are really, really, really good, and you have state title aspirations. Let's get into the NCHSA side. As you mentioned, a lot of turnover there at the live period. There were not the household names that people are accustomed to, whether it be transfer, guys transferring out, or in the case, CJ Rosser, who had played with Team USA, Jordan Page, who had played with Team USA, weren't there. They haven't announced that they're going anywhere as we shoot this, but those type of guys weren't there with their teams. They had just made a run winning with Team USA. So I think one of the unique parts of the NCBCA boys live period was the fact that it allowed a lot of other names to take center stage.
Yeah, this is going to be a year of fresh faces in the association on the public schools. And it was kind of cool to go to that event because you felt like you were kind of discovering new players who could really have breakout seasons. Now, some guys may be like, wait, didn't he already break out? He was first team all conference last year. But there's a little bit different notion in having like statewide notoriety and having its regional notoriety. So this year, there's a chance, there's a possibility. Again, if I'm just mentioning the guys who were not with their teams at this live period. It could mean nothing. It could mean that they're going somewhere. Who knows? But in the past, sometimes it does mean that someone is transferring or someone's leaving. But Kentrey Harrison wasn't with Reidsville. He could easily graduate early after football season and not play basketball this year. Yeah, CJ Rosser. They had that plus the NBA Top 100 camp, so it could have just been rest. But he wasn't with Northern Nash, and Jordan Page not with Broughton. If those three do not return, then you're looking at everyone. The only two players I think from first or second team high school OT All State last year that are returning are Deontay Neal of Reidsville, the Gatorade Player of the Year, and Jai Dawkins of Ben L. Smith, and that is it. And that's out of 30 players. I think those are the only two. I may be missing one other guy, but it's not much. I think North Mech, as much as we have these new faces showing up, it's a lot of the same teams. However, North Mecklenburg is still really deep. But it's not Chadlin Trailer's show anymore. It's Xavier Young on the low block. Okay, it's Ashton Pierce, who's kind of been the second option for the Vikings for the last couple of years. Ben L. Smith is the returning state champ, but they should be really good again. New Hanover, again, they've been runner-up 2 years in a row. They should still be really good. But instead of being led by Rod Meek Allen, it's Kellen Brown's turn. Okay, it's Jazeer Wright McGee's turn to run the show. Chambers, people, if you wrote out off Chambers because they lost two second-team All-State guys, Marcus Kerr and Taurus Bowie, I got news for you. Like, they're still really good.
They're
Except
really
now
good.
it's Malik McCotter, it's Cameron Thompson, it's Quintel Young. Like, get used to these names. Panther Creek, who was young last year, had some injuries. Like, get ready to learn names like Zyvon Puckett, Corey Smith, Camden Hill. Like, West Forsyth was waiting in the wings last year. Kamari Manuel and Jordan Tate are some names you got to know there.
And
So
that would
it
have been
is.
really easy to kind of write them off. You just see, oh, Jakari Brim not there anymore. Okay, cool. But you're looking at them and you're like, that's an 8A West contender right there.
It is, and they're a good example of someone that in the past they would have always run up against somebody else. And now you're like, well, hey, 8A West could be them and Chambers like easily because there's so few teams. Southern Durham is still going to be really good. Aiden Jeffries coming in out of St. Louis is kind of
My
like
goodness. What a
random.
replacement for Jackson Keefe.
The most random thing, right? Coming from St. Louis, he's got 1 year left, and he's going to play at Southern Durham, and he's basically like a perfect replacement for Jackson Keefe. AJ Morman's still a great point guard there. Was one of the few freshmen that made our All-State team last year. Hoggard is a team that looks around and says, "Hey, 8A East is winnable, right?" Hoggard and Panther Creek. Do not forget. I know the few of these teams now. I know we're like, "Hey, are you disrespecting us?" And the answer is no, absolutely not. Independence in 7A is in our way too early top 25. West Charlotte in 8A is in our way too early top 25. They had a few different transfers. They're going to be really good. Independence brings back a lot of people. Queens Grant is in 2A, and they looked really good. Okay, Chase Smith said he models his game after Tim Duncan, and that is enough for me. When a young kid says, I want to model my game after the big fundamental, like tells me he's on the right track. Northwood is still going to hang around Cam Fowler, Chad Graves, because they're now in 3A. Again, you look around 3A, who's left? A few other teams kind of remind you where they land. Farmville Central is now 3A. Reidsville is now 4A. Do not be surprised if Southeast Raleigh and Heritage and Mooresville make some noise in 7A. Do not be surprised if South Mecklenburg, Myers Park, and Huff, who are now all in the same conference, those three, or make some noise in 8A. Again, as things change, as you basically cut every class in half, the contenders cut in half. And so now some teams look around and say, hey, we can make a run. And there's just going to be so many fresh names. Like we did a whole story where we just interviewed 14 different players. And a lot of those guys are not people that made our all-state team last year. In some cases, we're not really on that, cutting line, but this is their year. This is the year they make that leap. And so it's going to be, I think, exciting. It may not be what we had 2 years ago, where you had Wake Forest, Duke, Carolina, and State all
I don't
with
think we're ever going to see that
first.
again.
Each one of those, the Big Four, had an in-state public school recruit who every time they played somewhere had a packed house, and all four of them except one, actually all four did make it to at least one regional final in their careers, but all of them made it. Three of them made it to the regional final in their last year, which was the first year that Final Four set up in Winston Salem. So it may not be one of those years, right? But it's going to be a fun year, and it's going to be eventful, and you're going to have to start programming your mind a little bit to get used to some new faces and some new teams.
I think the parity is going to be a really good thing as well, especially now that we are moving to 8 classifications. Like, it just leaves things so wide open. And again, there are just so many programs that are going to go into the first week in November saying, you know what, if the ball bounces the right way, this is very much our year. And I think that's really fun. And I think it's going to be really fun to cover because there are going to be a lot of different guys who, break onto the scene that we may not have seen this past month. I mean, there's going to be so
Right.
many guys that are just new and get that opportunity to, do their thing and step into the limelight that, maybe some of these guys over the last couple of years, like an Isaiah Evans or a Drake Powell had really stolen the show. I mean, you saw last year, Northwood makes a run after Drake Powell graduates to
Yeah.
the 2A state championship game. And who was it? It was Cam Fowler, a guy who was, second, third piece on that team 2-3 years ago. And he just went at it every day in practice with Powell. And then when, Drake moves on to UNC, it all of a sudden becomes Cam Fowler's show. And he is good enough to take that team back to the state championship. I think that's a great example of it. And also, you had mentioned Deontay Neal. If Kendre does have that option where he goes on and foregoes his senior basketball season, it's going to be really fun to watch Deontay Neal play on a team where there aren't 3 other guys scoring 15 points a game. Like, it could be really fun to watch him score 30, 35 a night because of his skill set and the way he plays. So that could be really exciting as well. But yeah, I think it's going to be a good thing for the NCHSA basketball, scene.
Go ahead and circle these two conferences as the ones that'll be the most fun. They're right next to each other, both in Mecklenburg County. Greater Charlotte, that's where Huff, Myers Park, and South Meck have landed. Okay. And then the Meck Power Six. That has got Chambers, West Charlotte, Independence, and North Mecklenburg all in the same league. So there's these conferences, it's going to take a while for me to get used to them. I still have a few critiques of how some of them are made, but in the case of, for instance, those two conferences right there, I kind of like what it does in that it makes these conference games so eventful, because like those are programs that all kind of want to compare each other themselves with one another, and now they get to do that. And there's going to be some really fun basketball going on in some really packed gyms in January, February, which we can't, as much as we look at the state championship race, let's not think about the mistake of like all the new conference rivalries that'll get birthed because of this new realignment as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very exciting to see some of these games. And yeah, while it may not be like a household name of a program that has been to multiple state championships over the last couple of years, that doesn't mean that on a Tuesday night or a Friday night they can't go across town and have a really exciting game.
Yep.
J. Mike, lots of exciting basketball. Obviously, we will have tons of coverage previewing that all the way up to November on HighSchoolOT.com, and then dive deep into the basketball world once the ball goes in the air in mid-November. Lots of things you can see. Again, High School OT Insiders, the way too early list. Over a dozen interviews, it feels like, from every live period from J. Mike. You can go see that on HighSchoolOT.com and dive into a little bit more analysis. Also, Joel Bryant for High School OT Insiders, if you want to see basketball coaching changes from across the state. There's several dozen that have happened on the boys and girls side. You can check that out. And then impact transfers that are coming in on the boys and girls side. High School OT Insiders have an opportunity to see what that movement looks like. Some people who have left schools and others who have come in. Again, that's all on High School OT Insider. We're going to